Are you convinced that your homeschooling is good, but still feel something's missing? After homeschooling 15 children over 36 years, I've discovered a deeper, richer way of learning, one that engages not just the mind, but the heart. In today's video, I explore the concept of heart thinking, drawn from scripture, science, and real-life moments that can only happen at home. We'll talk about why true learning involves more than just intellect, what the Bible says about delight and how it relates to education, how even the most reluctant learner can be transformed by joy, why some of the most powerful teaching happens in everyday moments, kneading bread, reading aloud, or walking through the woods. I'll also share two of my favorite homeschooling books that beautifully express this philosophy. If you've been looking for a higher path in home education, one rooted in joy, relationship, and God's design, you'll find encouragement and practical insight here. As I have said in previous videos, if you feel that classical education is the best for you and your children, I will fight for your right to do that. But as for me, and as for what I have discovered after homeschooling my children, I see that there's something better and something higher. Hi, in case you don't know me, I'm Sherry Hayes, the very interesting mother of 15 children. I have been homeschooling for over 36 years, and I want to take something that will add to your life today. So if you've got something to do, like, dusting off all your old albums, or cleaning off your windows, whatever you need to do, let's just enjoy that while we dig into the good life in Jesus. Now, I believe there is a type of education that encompasses not only the intellect, but the heart. Now, the Bible mentions a number of times that we have thoughts emanating from our, quote, inmost being, unquote. And the word used is me'ek, meaning kidneys, intestines, or abdomen. The Bible also mentions thinking as emanating from the heart, or what Ruth Beechick calls heart thinking. Okay, modern medicine has found that there is enough synaptic material in one's intestinal tract to make up an extra brain that could fit into the cranium of a cat. So about this big of a brain, that material is in our intestinal tract. Isn't that interesting? And that these synapses communicate directly with our brains. It's like there's a direct connection between what's in your intestines and what's in your mind. I think we have everyday examples of that, don't we? Scientists have also discovered that the nerve which connects the brain to the vocal cords doesn't go there directly, but it loops down to the heart first and then comes back to the vocal cords, which is quite curious, isn't it? Now, what is the point? There is more to a human being than the contents of what's in your noodle. But it doesn't take an army of clinicians or a think tank in a boardroom to know this. We can find it out reading a book aloud while snuggled on the couch on a snowy morning, or in the woods just after a light rain, or while waiting for a batch of cookies to come out of the oven, or while cleaning out the chicken coop, or while touching the wrinkled hand of a beloved elderly relative. The highest, best part of learning that mass compulsory education and sometimes classical education in its institutional forms miss is delight. Any learning, any teaching, quote unquote, which misses this one element misses the point of the entire exercise. After educating our 15 children for the last 36 years or so, and then examining my own education, I can see clearly. The only pedagogy which made an impact in my life or the lives of my children included the element of delight, either on the part of the teacher or on my part, or both. My part as a student, that is. Even the portions I remember from my own public education, which was quite worldly, were taught on the basis of delight. Either the teacher loved the subject and loved teaching on the subject, or I loved the subject and I wanted to know more. The definition of delight is a source of pleasure. Psalm 19:7 through 10 says this: "The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb." I would say that that is describing delight, wouldn't you? Pleasure? So we see that learning in the context of righteousness leads to pleasure and delight. Now, I've already discussed the principle of observe, think, and do, and you can find that in my last video. And there is a playlist of all these videos that I'm linking below this in the description for this video. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to educate ourselves so that when we make homeschooling decisions, we're going to do it from knowledge, right? So that next year we're not going to go, "Oh, why did I do this? Why did I spend all this money and this time?" Anyway, so we're trying to educate ourselves. So we'll have less of that. We'll probably still have some of that, but it'll be less. Okay. Now, in one of the original videos on this subject where I expressed my idea of observe, think, and do, I also introduced the idea of delight. And I put it this way. I put it in 3 parts. 1 is to delight in God. 2 is to delight in the child. And 3 is to enjoy learning with your child with God. Okay, I think those 3 elements are essential. And this is the heart thinking element of learning. This is the nutshell version also of the philosophy of homeschooling leaders such as Charlotte Mason, Ruth Beechick, Dr. Raymond Moore, John Taylor Godto, and John Holt. And those are also in the playlist. And we've talked about them over and over again. Okay, and there are others, of course. And some of these people understood this more than others in this list. But the amazing part is that it originates in God. It is assumed in the entire Bible. And here's a verse for that. "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who trusts in him." Psalm 34:8. Learning about God, learning in the context of his creation is all delicious. It's meant to be delightful. And here's another one in Psalm 16:11. "You will show me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." Ooh, isn't that wonderful? God's not against us feeling good, is he? Just saying. Even the hard parts of learning can be done with the ideal of delight, as we can delight in the outcome. So we're willing to go through some of the harshness of learning, maybe some hard things, in order to get to our ultimate goal in which we will delight. Just like we are pilgrims here on the earth, this is a light thing we're experiencing right now, and we're on our way to heaven. Even worldly pursuits follow this pattern. Now, I hesitate sharing the following story with you, but I think I can approach it delicately enough so that you will get the point. All right. So I hope you're familiar with John Taylor Godto. I have a few podcasts introducing him in the playlist referenced in the description. Okay, in a nutshell, Godto was elected Teacher of the Year in both New York City and New York State due to his unconventional methods, which produced some amazing results in some of the worst schools in New York City. At one point, his school district was bemoaning the low literacy rates of its students and talking of more funding, more testing, etc., and so on and so forth, remedial classes, etc. Now, one day, Godto noticed a large number of his students walking around with their noses in books. These were kids that could not read. That's what they said. They could not read. They were illiterate, and yet they were all reading books. And they looked like okay books, good books. But he confiscated a few. And this is what he found out. He discovered that a truck that was filled with pornographic literature had been abandoned under this bridge, and the kids found it out, and they were distributing these books all around the school. And so the kids who before couldn't read were all of a sudden learning to read so they could read these awful books. Now, I don't know what you want to do with that story, except that it does illustrate a point. If a child has a motivation of the heart, I'm sorry to say it might not be good, but because they wanted to do something, they found a way. When they were trying to learn to read just for whatever the school, for a test or something, they're not going to read so some teacher can give them a test. They don't care. But if they had a real reason for themselves, a compelling reason, they found a way to learn how to read. Sorry about that. Here's another illustration. Let's talk about bread. Now, there is a type of bread you can buy that's on the shelf. It's in a plastic bag. It's already sliced. It's ready to go, and you can go make a sandwich with it. Now, it's pretty good, and it will quiet a grumbling stomach, but it is sort of stale and probably a little bit tasteless, right? Unless you like toast it with butter or something. Then there is the type of bread that isn't cooked all the way. Have you seen this? Over at Costco, we bought like 3 sourdough loaves in this sealed plastic inside this box, and the idea is it's not completely cooked. It's cooked so that it won't go bad, and it's sealed, and it's got this little gel packet and everything. But once you take it out of the plastic, then you have to put it in the oven, and you warm it up, and you kind of crisp it and brown it a little bit, and then you slice it and you eat it. And it's better than like the stuff that's kind of stale in the plastic, but it's just not like 100%. It's pretty good, but it's not 100%. It'll go good with like a bowl of soup, right? But then there's the third type, and that is the type that when I make that kind of bread, my kids will hurry home from work to have some. And that is when I go all the way from scratch. And I put my flour, first I start with some hot water and some yeast and some brown sugar and some salt. And I use double the yeast called for so it goes faster. Yes, that's my trick. You can go ahead and use it. And, I proof it, and then I add my flour to that, and I knead it a whole bunch, and then when I roll it and I put it in my large loaf pans, and then I split it on top and I add pads of butter in each slit, and that way as it bakes, that butter melts and goes all over the bread. And when they eat it, it's like every slice is like buttery, and it's delicious. And that is the best bread. You can have that just for a meal, just bread, okay? So that's an experience, and it's not just about your stomach to fill it really quick. It's like a sensory thing that's happening, okay? This illustrates the different forms of learning. Some are prepared completely, and they can be of some use. If someone is hungry enough, they can find value there, can't they? Then there are the mostly cooked ones that require a little bit of participation on the part of the learner. These take more work, but the outcomes are better. But the best is the home-cooked variety from scratch. Yes, it takes more work, but the results are most satisfying, and they deal with a whole person, and it's just like an experience that encompasses everything you do. Okay, speaking of learning made at home, I want to remind you of a few books that you will find very helpful in this endeavor. The first one is A Biblical Home Education by Ruth Beechick. Now, if you can at all get a hold of this book, I really suggest you do it, because she relates all of education to all of the heart and soul of a child. I've referenced some of her ideas here in this podcast, where her idea of heart thinking, and also about the nerve that goes from the brain around the heart to the vocal cords. I got that from here. So there's all sorts of other ideas that you will love. So this is a really good book for you to purchase and something you want to read. I think I talked about that a little bit. I just talked about Ruth Beechick, but I don't know if I showcased this book. This is really amazing. Now, I talked about this book at the beginning of our series, and I think this is an important book. I want to talk about it again because, Charlotte Mason suggested that we should lay a feast of ideas before our children so they could have a delicious meal. And that is everything to do with delight, just like I'm talking about today. And this whole book is a delight for mommies. It's a feast. So Karen Andriola she's actually gathered these little illustrations from antique books herself and put these all in. See, that's some of my markers. And this is one of those types of books that, if you just have a few snippets of time here and there, you can read a chapter in the middle, anywhere you want to, and you will get something out of it. And it will just enthuse you. She talks about music. She even talks about Greek mythology and the Greeks in a very sweet way. And she talks about nature study and all kinds of stuff. This is an amazing, you need to have this book if you are interested in building delight both in yourself and your children. And besides this book, I talked with her recently and she sent me this book, and this is Mother Culture. And this is so amazing. This is not just about homeschooling. It's about mothering. And it's about building a life, not just for educating your children, but for your whole person, your whole being, and your whole family. And she wrote this because these are the things she would want to tell her own daughters about being a mom. And I love this book. So she's got some of the same illustrations. Here I'm just looking at, I'm not letting you see. Here's one of the illustrations. And here's another one. And I think that you will love each chapter. And it's also where you can just pick it up anywhere and get something from it. So these two books are great to have by your bedside table. This one I would include. And you can just pick these up anytime you need to and just be so encouraged and grab something from there that you can use. Okay, so those are my suggestions. You don't have to get them, but I think that they're worth it. Anyway, going forward, I would like to share the 4 legs of learning, or the 4 branches of learning, or what have you. 4 important columns, shall we call them, of true learning that will help you get some structure as you're doing your planning and you're doing your deciding. If you have these 4 elements, that you won't miss anything. Now, we know that you can't always, in 12 years or 13 years or 15 years, you can't cover everything a person's going to need to know for the rest of their lives. But you can spread that feast of ideas, and you can guide your children, and you can create habits in them, habits of knowing how to research and observe, think, and do, right? And so that's what we're going to be talking about in that one. And then I would also like to make some specific recommendations about materials. And I would like to go into something called the Eclectic Education Series, and we'll talk about that and how you can use that for your homeschooling. And so be watching for that one. Now be sure and visit my website, momdelights.com, as I have prepared lots of stuff to bless you. I have lots of blog posts, and I have freebies, and I have links to products that I've created on Amazon. I try to keep them as cheap as possible. And so, because I want to make you successful, because that's what I needed when I was starting. I even need it today. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful, refreshed day in Jesus. Bye-bye.